is the last word on sports. 4th down on 4.
Welcome into 4th Down on 4. I'm Scott Cody. Thanks for staying up late with us on this Christmas night, one that will surely never be forgot. The Saints and their fans, as much as they'd like to, will never forget the 2005 football season either. In the history books this year, we'll have an asterisk, but that single notation will just account for the 8 home games in 3 different stadiums. It won't explain how several players not only lost their football home, but the place they lay their head. The asterisk won't take into account the lost time when football players cease being football players and become fathers and husbands. Jim Haslett is both. Channel 4 Sports Director Jim Henderson with the Saints head coach in San Antonio.
We had a great offseason. Training camp was outstanding. Played well in preseason. Then we start off, we beat Carolina. Man, I thought everything was right there for us. I thought we were playing well. This is going good. And then, you know, it just started falling apart. You know, we had to play a game in New York. We had no advantage whatsoever. And I mean, it was just, we didn't handle the crowd noise. We didn't do anything well. And we kind of been falling apart ever since. You know, we got a lot of guys in injury reserve. You know, you get the best player in the football team on IR. These are not excuses either. All I'm saying is I thought this team was going to be better than it is right now, that the record shows.
Your role as the leader of this team is to buoy everybody's spirits. Who buoys yours in a situation like this?
Well, if my wife was here, you know, that would help. But obviously she's not around, and not, you know, you really just kind of, to be honest with you, nobody. I just, you know, there's nobody really to talk to about it. It's kind of a unique situation. It is a unique situation. I mean, you can't talk to any peers because I don't think anybody else has ever gone through anything like this. So it's, you know, it's different. But you know, it's hard. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's hard on everybody. What's it been like for your children? Well, my kids are actually pretty good. It's probably harder on me than it is them, because I'm the one that likes to sit down and watch my daughter play volleyball, or go watch my son play baseball, or go watch him play football. And, you know, I hadn't had that opportunity this year. And you know, picking them up from school, what little time off we have on a Friday, or going to dinner with them on a Friday night, I haven't had that, you know, for the last, you know, 100 days. So, but you know what, when I start feeling sorry for myself, I think about the people, to be honest with you, I think about the people that are fighting in other countries for us, in Iraq, and I think about what all these people are going through. I watched a piece the other day on CBS on a Saturday where a lady was living in her car. And you know, she couldn't get a FEMA trailer. So I was kind of scrambling online, trying to find out if I could find this lady so I could buy her a trailer, if I could get one, you know, just so every time I feel sorry for myself, I start thinking about other people that have it a lot worse than I do.
10 years from now, when you look back on the 2005 football season, what'll be your most lasting memory?
Things change fast, as we find out in a 24-hour period. And I mean, things change fast when people die, and I think it, you know, I think it made me understand that I'm a religious guy anyways. I mean, I believe in Christ and all that, but I think that more than anything, Jim, that enjoy the time you have, enjoy what you do, enjoy your family, because you just don't know when things are going to change.
Joining us now is Jeff Duncan, who's covered the Saints for quite a while now at the time of speaking to you. And Jeff, you've got a relationship with Coach Haslett. What have you seen the most this year? The stress level, his stress level obviously has gone up. How has it affected him? Obviously, you could just tell in his face that this is a worn-down man.
I was getting ready to say, I mean, he looks beaten down to me, Scott. Last year at this time, he was fighting. If you remember, he was taking on the owner for the comment about calling them a high school team. He was taking on Mickey Loomis, who he felt like had kind of undercut the team. And his team reflected that. They were fighting back, and that's why they finished so strongly last year. This year, I think the team is following his lead. He looks beaten down. He looks emotionally tapped, and I think justifiably so. I don't think anybody that's gone through an experience like this is going to have a lot of mental toughness to make it through. And I think it's showing right now in the way the team's performing. And I think it's just a trying situation. He'd been through a lot in his first 5 years, and it was kind of building to this year. I think there was a lot of expectations. and I think those all went out the window with Katrina.
Has the team, the organization, done everything in the best interest of its players and coaches this year with the whole situation?
Well, I think they had to do something. I mean, it was such an unprecedented situation. I think going to San Antonio was the best option they had. But I do think you know, they could have done more during the season for the players. Once they got settled in San Antonio, I think they could have put some more resources into the training facility, what they did have there. And I know the players have expressed that disappointment through the season. And I do think that they maybe could have fought a little harder on that game in New York. They made a big fuss about it after the fact. But I didn't hear a lot of people complaining about going to New York before that game. And I thought they came across as kind of sounding like a bunch of whiners, to be honest with you, after that. I think those things could have been done ahead of time. But again, this is an organization that has not been on the same page in a lot of ways in the front office and the coaching staff for a couple of years now. And everybody needed to be on the same page to get through something like this. And I think the fissures that were there before broke open during this season.
Yeah, I think they win that game. This is maybe that game in New York we're talking about. Maybe a completely different season. But over the past few weeks, we've seen Aaron Brooks, his frustrations have come public. Darren Howard getting disciplined by the team. Do you see this maybe being the norm coming at these last few games and into the offseason, or are these just a few guys that just had their limit?
No, I think you got a couple of guys there that stand out. Darren Howard is going to be a free agent after this season. He expected this to be a big money-making opportunity for him, and he's been replaced somewhat by Will Smith. I think he showed his frustrations and spoke out, which is uncharacteristic of Darren. He's usually a quiet team guy. And I think Aaron Brooks saw the handwriting on the wall, is almost wanting out of this situation, and I think he expressed his emotions. And I don't think either one of those are indicative of all the players in that locker room. I think both those guys were unique situations, and both of them know they're not going to be here next year. That's also a reason to speak out.
Real quick, this team, in your opinion, before the Hurricanes, if the Hurricanes don't hit, were they a playoff contender?
No, I didn't think so. As a matter of fact, in our preseason special section, which never hit the market because it was supposed to come out of Katrina, I picked them 5-11, and that was because I thought they were making the same mistakes that they'd made the previous few seasons. I'd seen that in preseason. I didn't see the same spark and emotion, even though they were talking a good game in preseason and had high expectations. I just felt like this was a team that wasn't really going to go anywhere, and they'd kind of tapped out with that remarkable 4-game winning streak at the end of the year.
You got 1 year left on your contract. Do you want to come back under these circumstances for that final year as the head coach of this football team?
Well, that's something that I think myself, Mr. Benson, and Mickey Loomis will hopefully discuss at some point before the season even ends, because I think, you know, something has to be done one way or another, and I'm not really sure what's right and what's wrong right now, and I don't know. I can't even answer that, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Under these circumstances, with another split schedule probably facing this football team next year, is it going to be hard to attract free agents or retain players on your team currently that are going to be free agents?
Well, I hear the rumors of that. I mean, you hear it, you know, through agents, and you hear different people say it. I don't know. I think money is always the outlying, final determination with players. If you want somebody and you're willing to pay them, and they'll probably endure anything. But obviously, when you show them facilities and you show them the city, if they're married and they got kids, they want to know where they're going to live, schools play involved. I mean, there's a lot of things that play into it. So to answer it off the top of my head, I'm sure it'll have some influence, but I don't know what.
I think you said a couple of weeks ago a split schedule wouldn't be acceptable or something along those lines. Now it looks like you're going to get a split schedule. What's your reaction to it, although you don't know what that split schedule will be yet?
You know, everything's still up in the air. I think the most important thing is wherever we play or wherever we train, obviously I'll give you a coaching perspective. I'm not going to give you a commissioner's perspective, an owner's perspective, a GM's perspective. I'm going to give you a head coach's perspective. Wherever we train, I would like to play all 8 games there. Now, obviously, they said that's not going to happen. I'd like to have at least the majority of our games there, to give this football team an opportunity to win games, to have a home field advantage, to have a place where you don't have to get on a plane every single week. we've been flying every week. Even the bye week, you couldn't stay at home. You had to get on a plane to go home. So, just the travel alone in the NFL is a killer. So the split schedule, I think I just have to wait and see how it all plays out. And as a football coach, you like to have the best advantage you can to win games.
If you're in New Orleans, you have your training base. Most of the people have their homes, and when you take a trip, it's an hour and 15-minute bus ride to Baton Rouge for 2 or 3 games, and maybe the rest of your games in New Orleans. If you're in San Antonio, you're on a plane to Baton Rouge, you're on a plane to New Orleans. It's probably wishful thinking on my part, but it sounds to me like it'd be a lot easier on your football team if you were based back in New Orleans.
I really never thought of it that way. I mean, you could be right from that standpoint, but there's a lot of things that plays into it. There's, the homes, schools, finances. Can the city support the football team? And I'm not here to answer those things, Jim. I don't know. I'm just a football coach. I'm not even an old football coach. I'm just a football coach.
Jeff Duncan with the Times-Picayune back with us. He's aged a lot, though, over this past year. I mean, obviously, you can tell that. But in your opinion, you've covered him. You know this guy. Is he back?
I'll be surprised. I mean, I think there is a possibility that he could come back. But I don't know if Jim wants to be back. And I think you can see it in that interview. He's not answering the question. I know at times last year he was very frustrated before going through all this. I really believe that he feels like it's not a very conducive situation to winning, and I think maybe for everybody involved, you'll see an amicable parting of the ways this offseason with a buyout involved. Jim moves on, perhaps to another head coaching job, perhaps to a coordinator's job, and they get some fresh blood in there. I mean, he's had 5 years. This is his team. These are his players, and it hasn't worked out. And I think they need to move in another direction too, for everybody's sake.
If the Saints are to come back, it's going to come down to the Superdome, and can they play there? The Ellerby Beckett report comes out, and given the circumstances, that was a pretty good report that came out as far as a timetable on when everything can be completed. Break that down for us and talk about what needs to be done, what will be done to get this team back into New Orleans.
Well, the biggest part of this rebuilding project is going to be putting a new roof on. I mean, that's a major job. That roof was 70% damaged, and they've got to get that thing done first of all before they can start working on the interior. So I think, a lot of people around town look at the building right now and think you could play in it, but there's so many other hidden things that need to be done. But I do think that Doug Thornton and his staff and all the architects are on a very aggressive timetable. I do think that they feel like they can get some games in there perhaps as soon as October. And I think a lot of that's going to play out with in this spring when we start seeing people getting inside the building, working on some of the interior fixtures, finding out how much mold is there, things like that are going to take a little while. And in this post-Katrina market, finding construction labor and things like that, I think, are other factors that could, weigh into how soon they get this thing done. But I really believe they're going to be able to get more games in the Superdome than people think. I think maybe they might play 6 games there with a schedule announced in January with some hyphenated games. What I mean by that is perhaps playing in Baton Rouge, perhaps New Orleans, but somewhere in Louisiana. And I'll be surprised if they play any games in San Antonio, because I think the league wants this team back here, and they're very image conscious, and they know right now they can't afford to be seen as turning their back on New Orleans after this disaster.
And you and I were talking. I think that'll be a big reason they're going to stick them in Metairie at their training facility. That's ready to go. They don't want Benson, like you said, putting any more digging his roots any more deeper in San Antonio.
Well, there's 2 reasons that helps them get back in New Orleans. One, the image factor we talked about. The NFL is very PR conscious, and they need this team back here. There's no reason for that team to be in San Antonio beyond this season. And second of all, if it doesn't work out in New Orleans, which I really believe the league wants it to, I think they're earnest that they want this team to be in the Gulf Coast region. But if it doesn't, let's face it, we'll know in 3 years, 2 or 3 years, and then they could move this team to LA, which is still an unsolved problem for the league. And then it would solve, in other words, it's a twofold gain for the league. They can move the team readily to LA if it need be. If not, they are seen as heroes in the recovery process here in New Orleans. If this team goes to San Antonio and Tom Benson gets entrenched there and tries to relocate there, it doesn't solve their LA problem either.
Real quick, the advisory committee that just happened this week with Tom Benson, Why no comment? Why won't the Saints comment about what is going on in these meetings?
Well, it's a very sensitive issue right now, and Tom Benson has never been one to comment on hardly anything, much less something this important to the future of the franchise. I think right now he's afraid to come out and say a whole lot because when he has in the past, it's backfired. I don't think that's the right thing. I think he needs to come out to alleviate some of these fears that Saints fans have had, but it's almost too little too late. And I really question whether this team coming back with Tom Benson owning the team as much damage as he's done, whether it will ever be successful here or not.
We appreciate you being so candid with us. Jeff Duncan with the Times-Picayune. Thanks for joining us. You have a good New Year.
Thanks, Scott. You too.
Monday, December 26th, 2005.
And that was picked off Carlos Evans.
They're losing games and they're losing their patience.
As far as I can judge it, the prevailing mood of the players right now is to get this hellacious season over with.
Forced out of New Orleans by Hurricane Katrina, the Saints have spent an entire season searching for a place to call home.
Right now, I'm tired of getting on planes, traveling for so-called home games. It's not favorable to us.
1, 2, 3, Saints!
Meanwhile, the ugly cloud of uncertainty shrouding the Saints grows darker and thicker.
It's up in the air, and so you kind of feel like a vagrant or something. You know, you just you don't know what's coming next.
Tonight on Outside the Lines, the New Orleans Saints in search of a home and a future.
And now, reporting for Outside the Lines, Jeremy Schaap.
For the New Orleans Saints, the best thing about this nomadic football season is that it will soon be over. It began with Katrina, it will end in disarray. Saturday's last-second loss in San Antonio left New Orleans 3-12 and ended a home schedule that drew 3 near-sellout crowds to the Alamodome. Meanwhile, the Saints' 4 losses at LSU's 79,000-seat Tiger Stadium drew little interest at best in Baton Rouge. Now Louisiana has formally requested that the team uphold its contract and return to its in-state training headquarters. Steve Delson has more on the NFL's most beleaguered franchise.
After 38 years of mostly forgettable football, the 2005 season may be the most painful in New Orleans Saints history.
As far as I can judge it, the prevailing mood of the players right now is to get this hellacious season over with.
2 wideouts to the near side of the field. They'll run it up the middle with Brown.
Jim Henderson has been the radio voice of the Saints since 1986.
This whole Katrina thing has been disorienting to everybody, and no one has recovered from it. Every day is a different day. Every day is uncertain.
Their odyssey began when they escaped New Orleans, just hours before the onslaught of Hurricane Katrina. Since that day, nearly 4 months ago, the uprooted Saints have been on the road all season.
I think the thing that's probably been getting to me the most is all the traveling we've done. It really hit me when I was going for our bye week when I was going to Florida, and I didn't even want to get on. Well, I didn't even want to get on the flight because I was just sick of flying.
After shifting their operations to San Antonio, they've had 2 different headquarters there and have practiced at several locations around the city. Their home games have all been played away from home.
1, 2, 3, Saints!
At the Alamodome in San Antonio, LSU's Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge, and even Giants Stadium in New Jersey, where the NFL moved their so-called home opener.
It gave them their first excuse for the way they felt that they were used and really abandoned by the NFL this entire season. And it's only gotten worse since then. They're trying to manage families, trying to manage households from, I don't know, 900 miles away in San Antonio.
John Carney moved his wife and 3 kids to the family's off-season home in California.
I try to see my wife at least every 2.5 weeks, and my children the same, but it's been sometimes a 3-week stretch. When we get off time early in the week, I try to fly back to San Diego. They have made a couple trips out here to San Antonio. It's been tough. It's been tough.
The frustrations intensified this month when the Saints were bumped from the Alamo Dome by an NCAA volleyball tournament. They're currently based at this high school, where they train on an unadorned field and dress in a locker room far too cramped for large professional athletes. Their weight room is set up under a tent inside the parking lot. Finally, getting fed up, quarterback Aaron Brooks blasted Saints owner Tom Benson in a radio interview.
I'm more than sure he could have done a lot more. I'm very sure he could have done a lot more. And for those who don't understand, come down here, San Antonio, and see what our conditions are like. It's just bad.
Some saw his comments as insensitive. Boomer Esiason of CBS Sports said he's making $6.6 million. How about all those people that are displaced?
Aaron felt strongly about what he said, and he's frustrated, like everybody, man. Well, regardless of what anybody says, until you're actually one of the guys on this team or one of the equipment managers that get probably 4 hours of sleep every night, until you've been in here in this room traveling with us, I don't care what you have to say. I don't want to hear what you have to say.
3 days after Brooks complained about the team's working conditions, he was benched by the Saints. Brooks had been struggling, but the timing of his demotion raised questions.
If you did not make those comments, do you think this change still would have been made?
It's a possibility, but at the same time, rumor had it that, they wanted to sit me down soon. But they didn't, and that was a possibility. It could have influenced it, but who knows? Only they know.
Amidst all the acrimony, the NFL announced that any player who'd been with the Saints all season would receive a $40,000 bonus for the difficulties arising from Hurricane Katrina. The players' reaction was mixed.
I think it helps. I think the amount is, I don't think it's too much. I'll say that much.
I think we would have been very pleased and less frustrated had we known 2 months ago that they were working on this and that eventually they would come to this, and we had no word of that.
With the Saints' immediate future still unsettled, some of the players are doubtful about the team's ability to upgrade its roster through free agency.
What do you tell a guy that you want to bring in? Well, you come here to San Antonio or New Orleans. We don't know where we're going to be, but come on over anyway and come help us win some games. It's not going to happen.
To be a free agent, I mean, to know that you're not stable in one place, that's not something you want to bring your family into.
The NFL hopes to announce the Saints' 2006 schedule in January, well before free agency starts in March. But for now, it still appears the Saints will play home games in San Antonio, Baton Rouge, and perhaps the Superdome by late next season. As for where the Saints will live and practice next year, the league's most beleaguered team is anxious to get some answers.
Man, next year, we have no idea. I mean, it's up in the air, and so you kind of feel like a vagrant or something, you just, you don't know what's coming next.
Steve Delson reporting the NFL Players Association declined our invitation to address the Saints situation. Speaking for the NFL, spokesman Greg Aiello said, quote, "We understand the team's frustrations. Like everyone impacted by the hurricane, the Saints faced unprecedented challenges this year. When we return, we'll examine some of those challenges, like home games in 3 different stadiums, including Giants Stadium."
So the visiting Giants in their own stadium, and the Saints wearing their home black and gold uniforms as the Saints are in their dome away from home. The opening kickoff of this game from Tiger Stadium. We are underway.
Outside the Lines, brought to you by boneless wings at KFC's new flavor station. Be the boss. Choose your sauce at KFC.
I want the commissioner to come play this game. Right now, I'm tired of getting on planes, traveling for so-called home games. It's not favorable to us, and it's not going to take care of us. I really don't think that's the way to do it.
And joining us tonight to help examine the Saints' next move, we welcome Lee Zurich. He covers the Saints for WWL TV in New Orleans. Vic Carucci also joins us. He covers the NFL for NFL.com. Lee, let's start with you. We heard Aaron Brooks describe the conditions a couple of weeks ago. How bad has it been for the players?
It's been bad for the players, and a lot of them have been upset with the NFL and the commissioner. But really, I think Aaron Brooks is right in a lot of ways, blaming the owner, Tom Benson. This is a team that had an off week in the early part of November, and they really could have moved their entire base operations back to New Orleans. Most of the players' homes were not harmed at all by Hurricane Katrina. The practice facility is in perfect shape right now, and instead of doing that, they've stayed in San Antonio, where many have been living in apartments away from their families and practicing in subpar facilities.
Vic, from the NFL's perspective and inside and around the league, how is Tom Benson's behavior being viewed right now?
I haven't heard anything particularly negative about how he's handling it, and I think the league, frankly, has been on top of this thing. I know the players want to lash out. I know they're frustrated. I know they want to be mad at somebody, and being mad at a hurricane, well, that can only go so far. But bottom line is that I think, for the most part, this has been trying to cope with an exceptionally bad situation, and there is no roadmap, there is no manual.
There's no roadmap. Well, what about next year, though, Vic? What is the roadmap for then?
Well, I think it's up in the air, Jeremy. I think trying to figure out where this team will play is still an unsettled situation. It isn't necessarily going to be San Antonio. It could be Louisiana in some form or another. Something tells me that it's still going to be a fragmented or fractured situation. I don't know that this team can get a facility and get a situation that is entirely stable as far as a home base even next year.
Lee, you're nodding your head in agreement. What's your sense of what's going to happen in 2006 for the Saints?
Well, I disagree with the last thing he said, because they could have that type of situation in New Orleans. There's a facility that's absolutely perfect for them. They have an indoor facility there, a huge weight room, everything they've been used to that's perfectly fine for them to move into. As I said, most of the players' homes are in perfect shape. They could play at least half of their games in the Superdome, starting in November of next year, and may have to go to Baton Rouge for, the NFL could work the schedule where they only have to go to 1 or 2 or 3 games in Baton Rouge next year. It's not a perfect situation, but to me that seems to be the most perfect for the Saints next year.
Vic, 2 possibilities have been mentioned a lot: permanent relocation to San Antonio and possible relocation to Los Angeles, which we all know has been without a franchise for a long time. What are your thoughts about those 2 possibilities?
I think L.A. is way off, Jeremy, because you don't have a situation with a stadium settled there, and I think that is still a long way from resolution. As far as San Antonio, that seems to be the most realistic in terms of trying to have a permanent base for a place that could be ready sooner. And of course, to go back to Lee's point, yeah, as far as practice facility, there is something there to be for them to go back to. But I am talking about a playing place, and that's the thing that's going to be divided up. And probably, if you had to lay everything on the table, maybe San Antonio by 2007 as a permanent place could be the possibility.
Lee, there's been kind of a tone in some of the responses of the NFL officials and others to the comments made by some of the players about how difficult it's been for them. The tone has been kind of like, well, look what everybody else is going through. How are the people in New Orleans reacting to the comments of Aaron Brooks and some of his teammates, who, after all, are making a lot of money and don't have necessarily the same concerns they do?
Well, I think there are a large group of people who really don't want to hear the complaining from these guys making millions of dollars, because, there's many people here who have lost their homes, lost their businesses, and very late in life are starting over. And I think there's a larger portion of people who are just upset with Tom Benson. He's a New Orleans native. This is a state that has given him the best deal to any owner in professional sports. He's earned over $80 million free dollars from the state over the past 5 years. He's only had one playoff appearance since '93, yet the fans have sold out his games consistently, and they're upset that he would want to move this team right now and maybe not be there for the community.
Vic, public relations, economics, or just a simple sense of fairness, what is going to be the NFL's deciding motivation when it decides what to do with the Saints?
Well, I think the first thing is fairness. You're talking about competition in sport, and I think you want to make that as fair as possible to everyone involved. They've tried, to take the first step, give the players some of that hardship bonus pay in conjunction with the NFL Players Association, but it's a hard thing to sort out, and there is no absolute right answer. And keep in mind, when you talk about league decisions, there are 31 other teams that have a say in everything that the league does.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your thoughts this evening. Vic Carucci from NFL.com and Lee Zurich from WWL TV in New Orleans. And remember, you can share your thoughts with us at ESPN.com. The keyword's OTL Nightly, or call us toll-free at 866-ESPN-OTL.
Good morning once again, guys. Well, Saints fans who actually want to see their team come back home may get their wish. Today's San Antonio Express newspaper is reporting that the team is expected to come back home to their training facility in Metairie on Airline Drive. And that could mean that the team will not be playing at the Alamo Dome next year. NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue is supposed to make the announcement to the team today. The Saints have been frustrated with conditions since Hurricane Katrina forced them out of New Orleans a couple of weeks before the season. The Saints play their last game on Sunday in Tampa. Well, former employees have
Next on Channel 4's Eyewitness News.
There were a lot of people that, said we were losing games and they didn't care if we left or not. Then we got to San Antonio and somebody wanted us. All of them started crying about us coming back. Now that we're coming back, we'll see.
Saints players are reacting to the news that lots of fans have been waiting for. The team is coming back to New Orleans. New Orleans police are warning people again about a potential danger this New Year's Eve weekend. And the Justice Department wants to know who leaked information on President Bush's secret spying program.
From WWL TV, the spirit of Louisiana. This is Louisiana's news leader, Channel 4's Eyewitness News.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Paulson. Thanks for joining us today. NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue has put an end to all the rumors and the guessing about the future of the Saints and New Orleans. He says the Saints will be back in town next year. That's the word from the commissioner, who says the players and the staff are all coming back to New Orleans next month, and that's welcome news for a lot of fans in this city. Lee Zurich is joining us with more on that. This is big news.
Big news. The Saints are definitely coming back. It was in the commissioner's hands where they played football games next year.
No matter what Mr. Benson wanted.
Yes, and he decided they are going to be in Louisiana. After months of speculation, the Saints are coming home. NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue spent today in San Antonio telling the team they would be returning back to New Orleans, and next season will play games in Baton Rouge and the Superdome. Now today, Tom Benson sent his entire organization a memo saying he's pleased to be returning to Metairie in January and hopes to play as many games as possible in the Superdome. Benson was expected to speak with reporters in San Antonio today, but opted not to. Benson is expected to make a brief comment this afternoon here in New Orleans. Now this morning we caught up with Tim Coulon, the state's lead negotiator with the Saints. Coulon says a lot of hard work went into bringing the team back, and he's hopeful eventually the state and Saints can work out a long-term deal.
Everything since Katrina has been a struggle for everyone, even those who impacted very little. I think it's just been a very challenge to overcome the storm, to overcome ourselves in many respects, and of course, overcome our image. So I think this is a very positive step. I think that a lot of time and effort went into it.
Coulon is hopeful the Superdome will be ready for November and doesn't think it'll happen much earlier than that. So next season, the Saints will probably play about half of their games in the Baton Rouge and Tiger Stadium and about half in the Superdome. Now, Tom Benson is expected to have that news conference here in New Orleans around 2:15 today. We will have that live for you this afternoon right here on Channel 4. Tom Benson's comments on bringing the team back to New Orleans for next year.
And there's been a lot of wrangling between Mr. Benson and Paul Tagliabue over this.
Yeah, there has, and I think it's obvious that the commissioner won this battle, and hopefully Tom Benson, his feelings will change somewhat, and some people I talked to in the organization said he was, somewhat excited this morning. So
well, good.
We'll see if things can change with his feelings.
All right, thank you very much, Lee. This morning, Coach Jim Haslett and some of the players reacted to the news, but not with all the excitement you might expect. Drew Rosegen is with our sister station in San Antonio, where the commissioner is expected to hold a news conference. And Drew's been following the latest developments, and this is kind of a blow to you folks in San Antonio, isn't it?
It is kind of. It's been a strange trip for the Saints here in San Antonio. We've loved having them. We've certainly loved having them economically. We are just waiting for Commissioner Tagliabue to come out and confirm to us what we do know, which is the Saints are packing up and heading back to New Orleans, despite Mayor Phil Hardberger's cheerleading. Some said shameless cheerleading to keep the Saints here in San Antonio, despite Tom Benson's sometimes non-committal attitude towards getting them back to New Orleans. The Saints and the San Antonio's, this strange 4-month odyssey, some said oddity, is coming to an end. Saints coach Jim Haslett looked positively grim as he headed into this team meeting.
Hey guys, I'm done. I already made a statement.
Done? You gotta be happy though.
Why is that?
Well, you're going back to New Orleans.
How's your family feel?
He didn't want to talk with us, but star receiver Joe Horn, not surprisingly, did.
Once we were in New Orleans, there were a lot of people that said we were losing games and they didn't care if we left or not. Then we got to San Antonio and somebody wanted us. All of them started crying about us coming back. Now that we're coming back, we'll see. We'll see how much they missed us.
There are lots of smiles out here today among Saints coaches and players. This is, after all, payday. But these are weary smiles of relief. One coach told us the team has felt like children in a bitter divorce. And as for the players, the attitude is, thanks for the memory, San Antonio. We'll send you a postcard.
Man, I hate to leave because they've welcomed us so much around here, and everywhere you go, they want the team here, and they treated us so well. But we have to go back because the way we left New Orleans, the way we left the Gulf Coast, wasn't right. It's a bad feeling, and I'm happy to go back to give the fans an opportunity to have us back home.
Well, Saints owner Tom Benson just left this meeting a few minutes ago, got into a car, sped off to the airport. He's heading back there to New Orleans. The mayor of San Antonio, Phil Hardberger, released a statement saying, look, we never, tried really to get the Saints here as a disrespectful to New Orleans. We respect the NFL's decision, and we really only got them there. He said, try to get them here to show everybody that San Antonio could support an NFL team, and he said, we proved that. But other than that, he was happy that the Saints came and pumped some money into our economy, and we hope he feels good about them going back, because we're still going to try to get a team here at some point down the road. By the way, no talking any of this out here, no talk at all about what happens after 2006. Where will the Saints be then? Nobody knows, and they're not saying in there either.
Now, in all reality, it did seem like your mayor was trying to get that team to move to San Antonio. And I was kind of surprised, maybe you were too, by some of the reaction by the players.
Well, the players, they were talking still, even today, how upset they were about how this whole process was handled. And even after coming out of that meeting, and we assumed probably feeling better, and they were feeling better, that this has been resolved, at least for 2006, they're still concerned about their families, their children going back to New Orleans, the air quality, the water quality, things like that. So that is still a concern. They just want to know where they're going to be playing. So at least on that score, they're feeling a lot better today than they were yesterday.
All right, Drew, thank you very much. We appreciate the report. And, of course, we'll have plenty.
From WWL TV Channel 4, this is an Eyewitness News special report.
Live on Airline Drive, where Saints owner Tom Benson will be holding a press conference announcing that his team is returning to Louisiana after the season ends coming up this Sunday. Tom Benson walking up to the podium right now along with his granddaughter Rita LeBlanc, Dennis Lauscha of the Saints,
Good afternoon,
Mike
ladies and
Stanfield,
gentlemen.
the ticket coordinator.
Thank you for turning out at this press conference at such short notice. These things on? My name is Christian Saunier with Peter Mayer Advertising, and I'm here with Mr. Benson and his management team. Mr. Benson's going to make an announcement. His schedule is really tight. He's got to fly back to San Antonio, so he'll make an announcement and have to head back to San Antonio. Mr. Benson?
Well, thank you all for being here this afternoon, and I think you'll find that coming out was going to be well worth your time. I'm very excited to be here myself. I just got off the phone with the governor and gave her this good news, and that I want you to hear it. On behalf of the Saints management, coaching staff, and players, I'd like to thank San Antonio for receiving us warmly this season under such difficult circumstances. Without their support, we would not have been able to play the 2005 season. The current Saints management team has decided that returning to the practice facility in Metairie is the best interest of our football team and the right thing to do for the New Orleans community. The formal notice in writing from the state and FEMA that they have returned this facility back to us has made this possible. You got to go back with me to what happened when FEMA took this over, when we tried to return on about September the 4th, and we were forcibly, with guns, told us that they had taken over these facilities. Like many in New Orleans, we were forced to relocate our team and families in order to survive. I think it was an amazing achievement that we were able to play out the 2005 season, and truly great testament to the loyal people in our organization. I'm going to tell you, you know, there was less than 10 people that didn't stay with us during this very hardship time. That was tremendous, tremendous. What a great thing that could say about a great club from a great city. I look at them all with great pride as world-class individuals. From my statement of September the 6th, immediately following the hurricane and evacuation, as we move forward together, the Saints look forward to serving as a leader in the rebuilding and revitalization of our great community. We are returning now to continue to live up to my repeated statements. The NFL and us, that's me, my staff, y'all just, well, you want to introduce them? Sorry. Let me just stand up and introduce yourself for me. Let me just do that before we go on here. Go ahead, Ben.
Ben Hill.
Ben, what do you, Ben?
Working in marketing sponsorships.
All right.
Speaking of minor general counsel.
And other things, what she does.
Mike Stanfield, I do the tickets. Dennis Losh, the Vice President, CFO.
Both Mike and Ben have about 20 people that work on them in each category and trying to do these things, to give you some idea. Dennis, he told you, he was the Chief Financial Officer. He's the guy to make sure everybody gets paid. That's very important, huh? And on this side.
Rita Benson of Law, owner executive.
I'm Mickey Loomis, general manager. Ray Benson.
Don't know most of that. And sitting down below here is, if you won't mind standing there, is my wife, Gail. I'd like, sorry I didn't introduce all of you all earlier, huh? I'm looking at this because I don't want to miss anything, because I know you all wouldn't want me to miss anything, all right? So I got it written down here to make sure that everybody is going to hear what they'd like to hear. SMG has informed our team, this team here, that the Superdome will be ready for play as early as September 15th. The work will be significant and studies are ongoing. We will keep everyone updated as soon as additional accurate information is provided. The Saints are committed. The Saints are committed to continue to role as a community leader, economic engine, an integral part of the fabric of the city of New Orleans in the great Gulf South region. We are eager to do our part in rebuilding New Orleans by bringing back to this area $550 million, this is a 2006 projection, in economic benefits, supporting more than 4,200 jobs and generating more than $24 million in state taxes. I might even mention at this point that our people, even though they were working in Texas, and our players, they were paying Louisiana income tax. They've been paying Louisiana income tax all this time. In the wake of the hurricane, we founded the New Orleans Saints Hurricane Katrina Fund. Not just 2 weeks ago. This is back in the first part of September, through which we have already donated, through this fund, which a lot of the sources were from the Saints itself and the employees, and then outside people, $700,000 to the New Orleans area in order to aid rebuilding during the 2005 football season. You know, I'm really, this has been a tough 4 months. Just about a week or so ago, my staff gave me a plaque, and it says, when things get tough, the tough get going. And in it also they said, thanks for bringing the ship in. Or through your leadership, we were able to bring the ship in. Well, wasn't that great? When things get tough, the tough get going, and they thank me for helping them bring the ship in. I think this is really outstanding, and the fact that that we're here today for this great announcement that we're coming back to be a nucleus to make this even a greater city than it ever was before. There's a lot of work, hard work ahead for us, but the spirit of rebuilding in New Orleans, we are wholeheartedly committed to making the Saints better than ever. That's on and off the practice field, too. I mean, on and off the field, not the practice field. On and off. As I told the players just this morning, I said the best thing is that we can do this weekend is go over there and beat Tampa Bay. You know, I don't like the Bucks at all. Matter of fact, not many of them besides the Saints, though I do like. So, but I didn't like the Bucks at all, and the best thing you could do is go out there and beat the Bucks. The big thing we want to do, too, I want to do personally, and everybody in the organization is committed to help rebuilding our great city. Thank you all for being here this afternoon, and I'll be around in the next few weeks, be talking to you some more. Thank you very much.
Are you looking for any improvement? That's Saints owner Tom Benson. Much more on the Saints coming up tonight at 5 and 6.
Saints owner Tom Benson announces that the organization is coming home and ready for the hard work ahead in helping to rebuild New Orleans. Good evening, I'm Dennis Woltering. Benson told his organization today in San Antonio that after the season wraps on Sunday, the team will come back to its Metairie facility and play all games in Louisiana next year. Lee Zurich has more.
After 4 months of mostly silence, Tom Benson tried to repair his image, justifying his team's 4 months in San Antonio.
Like many in New Orleans, we were forced to, relocate our team and families in order to survive.
Benson also highlighted his employees' happiness with his handling of the organization post-Katrina.
Just about a week or so ago, my staff gave me a plaque, and it says, when things get tough, the tough get going.
But Benson's main message today was that his team will be going back home.
As we move forward together, the Saints look forward to serving as a leader in the rebuilding and revitalization of our great community.
But Benson wouldn't say if that pledge was a short or long-term commitment.
And I'll be around in the next few weeks, be talking to you some more. Thank you very much.
Benson spoke for less than 10 minutes, mostly from prepared notes, not taking any questions, leaving that to General Manager Mickey Loomis.
He talked about the commitment. Is that more than a one-year commitment he's making there?
I think you'll have to ask him that. We're committed to, to come here. We're gonna be part of the rebuilding process.
Saints personnel will return to New Orleans sometime next month. The games next season will be played in the Superdome and possibly Tiger Stadium. Today, Dome manager Doug Thornton told Eyewitness News the Dome could be available for sometime in September, almost 2 months quicker than he had previously thought. And that would be good to have all the games in the Dome next year.
Absolutely. And how does that affect the enhancements they're talking about making to the Superdome?
Well, they're not going to do the big enhancements that they talked about. They would need a more long-term commitment from the NFL and the Saints. They will do some smaller enhancements to the Dome, and the Dome will still be a work in progress even if they start to play in September 15th there in the Dome.
Thanks, Lee.
You bet.
League Commissioner Paul Tagliabue met with the Saints staff, team, and coaches today in San Antonio to let them know that they're going home. He says one big question players wanted to know is if the move home is only a one-year deal.
I said that it was not a one-year experiment. Our goal was to make it a multi-year effort, and so that. But I also said that there are a lot of things that have yet to be accomplished before we can be certain that it will be a multi-year effort.
Tagliabue says he thinks New Orleans will be able to support an NFL team, but he adds ticket sales next season will need to be evaluated, especially since the TV blackout for the Saints was lifted this year. Mayor Ray Nagin is eager to get the Saints back in the city, but he also knows there's a lot of work to do to make sure it's a long-term stay. Mike Haas has more on the mayor's reaction.
Spending some time at Cafe Du Monde and taking his first ever carriage ride through the quarter, Mayor Ray Nagin took his own advice today and became a tourist in his own hometown. He says it's, quote, great. The Saints are coming back to play in the Dome next year. But he also says it's tough to put that kind of economic pressure on a city to respond in 8 months.
I think the short term it's not fair, and that's what I'm saying. You know, it's kind of like they're saying they're dipping their toe in this thing and saying we're going to wait, we're going to give you a full season to prove yourself, and then if you don't, we may be somewhere else.
Before running the city, Nagin ran a business, and he knows the NFL won't survive in New Orleans without the support of the business community. And right now, that level of support is an unknown.
I really don't know, and that's the big question. Most businesses are trying to recover and trying to get back, and that's a short window. But it's the window we have, and, you know, citizens will step up.
But Nagin says the team has to step up, too, when it comes to their image and marketing themselves.
And right now, the Saints have a difficult task of cleaning up their image, from a lot of different perspectives. And whether a year is enough time, I'm not sure, but we'll see. I mean, this city has supported the Saints for 30-something years, and I'm sure people will step up, but they want to see a good product, and they want to see a long-term commitment.
Mayor Nagin now has his wife and family back from Dallas, where they evacuated from the storm. His daughter is ready to return to school here next week. And coming up tonight at 10, we'll hear what the mayor was looking for during his field trip through the quarter today and what the tourists told him.
That the mayor's family is coming back is a good sign that things are starting to return to normal for
They're back. He's not yet back in his house. They're still staying in an apartment, but his daughter is getting ready to go back to school and, next semester. So that aspect, yeah, back to normal.
All right. Thanks, Mike. For the first time, good news on the Saints front today.
Yeah, not totally unexpected, but good news nonetheless. The Saints return to New Orleans in Louisiana probably wasn't universally endorsed by the players, many of whom had earlier expressed a desire to stay in San Antonio. But many of them said their primary desire was to play where they practice, and now they will. The Saints' return probably isn't universally endorsed by all the Saints nation either. But Joe Horn said that for those who still bleed black and gold, he's happy that today's announcement supplied a transfusion.
I'm happy for the people there in Louisiana and Mississippi, and I'm happy for the fans. It gives them an opportunity to see the Saints, to know that we are coming home. I'm happy for the fans, for the real fans of New Orleans, for the New Orleans Saints. That's what I'm happy for. It gives them an opportunity, regardless of our record, because they are diehard fans, to know that we're coming back home, and they have the opportunity to support the New Orleans Saints like they always have.
And so it wasn't a divorce after all, just a separation these last 4 months between Tom Benson and the New Orleans fans. In behalf of those fans, I would say this. As in any separation, we both probably said and did some things during it that we regret. But from this day forward, until evidence to the contrary, let's think the best of one another, as we once did when we first were united. During our estrangement, you sought affection and comfort elsewhere. That's understandable. But the flirtation with another partner hurt our feelings, and that's understandable too. Now you've come back saying you want this marriage to work. Like any marriage that does, it will take effort, commitment, and sacrifice on both of our parts to do so. As you said today, it's been a tough 4 months, and it has, for each and every one of us. We want to return to our former lives. More than that, we need to return as much as possible to our same former lives. You without us, and us without you, wouldn't ever be the same. You have wants and needs. We have wants and needs. We can only hope that these last 4 months have given both of us greater wisdom to recognize the difference. Dennis, let's look at sports.
Topping our news at 7 a.m. now that the Saints have closed out their 2005 NFL season on a low note. Talk is swirling about the future of head coach Jim Haslett. And today, Haslett will meet with team general manager Mickey Loomis. Lucy Bustamante is following the story this morning. She joins us live with much more from the Saints training facility on Airline Drive. Good morning, Lucy.
And good morning, Jennifer. Well, if you talk to the people around here, as we've been doing all morning, it's really a mixed emotion. We've talked to people who say they could stay in San Antonio for all they care, and then we've talked to other people that say he absolutely needs to stay, that this was just a very tough year. As you can see by the sign behind me here on the New Orleans Saints sign at the Metairie facility, it says, "It's our future, don't screw it up." Now, if you watch this past game, people were really surprised. They said, wow, they were doing pretty well. However, that is not enough to keep people's attention. Also, if you look at the record, the last 2 times that this has happened, the Saints have started the next season with a new coach and almost a completely new staff. So the odds are not in Haslett's favor. However, if you ask him, he would like to stay, even though he as well has mixed emotions. We talked to one lady who says this is the time that Haslett needs to stay.
I think when people want something, the time to go for it is when things are tough. Because who's gonna give you a position when it's easy? You know what I mean?
Part of him, he says, maybe it's time for a change, because it's. I think as a head coach nowadays, I think you can't get stuck somewhere too long. And then the third part of me is the unknown. You know, what happens if it happens?
Now, if you watched the game this past week, and the final score was 27-13. They lost at Tampa Bay. However, the Saints fan is a Saints fan no matter what. Even after a year like this, the people that we talk to say it's unfortunate the way that the season has gone for everyone, really, and especially what Benson has been putting the Saints fan through. They are upset that this is the way that the season has ended, but they are hopeful that the Saints will be here next year. As you said, Jennifer, Mr. Loomis, the general manager, is supposed to meet with Coach Haslett today. We will let you know what happens. For now, live in Metairie, Lucy Bustamante, Channel 4 Eyewitness News. Jen.
Okay, thanks very much, Lucy. We'll say.
Every Monday morning, we try to give Archie Manning a call, get some of the lowdown on his take on the game that we just saw yesterday. Actually, it wasn't as bad a game as I thought it might be, Archie.
No, considering Tampa Bay had so much on the line. But the one thing you got to remember, and history shows, Saints have always played very well in Tampa Bay. Always played real well against the Bucks. I think have a good formula when they play them. So they hung in the football game. Actually had some opportunities, but I don't know, Eric, just with the way the Saints season's gone, the way the Bucks have gone, I never really thought during the course of the game that the Saints were going to win.
Yeah, although they've always won at Tampa's hometown.
Yeah, they played real good over there and hung right in the game yesterday. Tampa Bay, of course, they're going to be the number 3 seed in the NFC. They win the South Division, but they aren't a real good football team. I mean, they've got some good players, and they've done a good job this year of turning things around after a couple of disappointing seasons, but they just had a lot more on the line yesterday.
Only thing good come out of this is we do get a high draft choice, and it looks like a quarterback will be the number 2 choice.
Well, it's possible. I don't know. You know, I tell you, they do so much these days, Eric, in analyzing these people. And of course, Matt Leinert's had a great college career. I think Reggie Bush will be the first pick
undoubtedly,
to the Texans. And Matt Leinert's had a great career, but still, they're going to break him down. It'll be some people who say, yeah, he merits being a top 5 pick, and some say he won't. So, you know, just so much of it depends on what goes on in the next couple of weeks with the Saints as they get ready to move their operation back to New Orleans. You know, if there's going to be any changes at the top in management, is Jim Haslett going to be here? If he's not here, then you know you're going to have an overhaul in the coaching
staff. Of course, yeah.
So,
but as far as players, what does the team need right now? I mean, who should they be looking for?
Well, I mean, you know, you don't know. That's got to be determined by by management and by coaching. You know, you start with a quarterback. So you know, the first thing, you know, Aaron Brooks still belongs to this team. So you may have a new guy that says no, we're going to go with Aaron Brooks. We're going to get a new coach in here. We're going to coach him up. We're going to get him ready to play. We owe him money. We're going to see what happens there. If not, then you say, well, we're going to bring in a veteran quarterback. Or, you know, anytime you bring in a young, you draft a quarterback early like that, you got to be ready to go through some growing pains in the first couple of years. This is a critical time for this organization, and it may be a judgment there. You don't want to go through growing pains with a young quarterback as we try to keep our team. It's going to be so important in the next couple of years. You may want to go with a veteran.
And there are so many unknowns right now. I mean, you know, you've got a front office that could be going. You've got a head coach that could be going, an entire coaching staff that could be going, a quarterback that could be going, a team that could be going in the next few years away from the city.
Yeah, I don't know if there's ever been a situation like this where there are so many questions on the football team. Starting with, you know, let's even start with ownership. I mean, what's Tom? You know, I think deep down, Tom Benson's probably not happy with this move back to New Orleans. At least that's what I understand. So you start with ownership, then you go to management, then you go to coaching, and then you go to players, and then, like I said, you know, what timetable do we have there in New Orleans to get to prove to the league, to the other owners, that we're NFL worthy? And as people come back into the city, as companies try to get their businesses going, what's going to be the commitment right there to put people in box suites, to put people in seats in that Superdome and support the Saints?
And you know, that corporate sponsorship is one thing that really is key. I mean, you know, the fans are going to keep on coming back if the Saints are here playing in the Dome next year. The trouble is, will business be back filling up those big suites?
Yeah, that's just the fans is not enough. You're right. The businesses are so important, and we were lacking there before the storm. You know, and that's and it's a valid complaint that Tom Benson had compared to some other teams. You know, the suites weren't full. I'm sure he probably couldn't charge what he really wanted to.
And that's where the team makes a lot of money.
That's where these owners make a lot of money. That's where other owners have made a lot of money. So many times they've done it with new stadiums, and I think that's where Tom Benson kind of got cross with New Orleans, is he's not made as much money as the other owners.
Now let's talk about the playoffs. Eli and the Giants will be playing this weekend.
They will. They'll be playing next Sunday at 12 o'clock. They'll be hosting the Carolina Panthers, a team that
they looked good yesterday.
They looked great. They went in and really took care of business there in Atlanta. Atlanta finishes off a disappointing season, but Carolina will be on a real high right there, and they'll. The Giants have been a good team at home this year, but Carolina, they'll go in very confident. That'll be a tough game for the Giants. It'll be a good football game.
And an emotional day for the Indianapolis Colts yesterday with Coach Duncan coming back, and an important win for them to end the season.
Well, it was an emotional day, and I think kind of an emotional win. The win didn't really mean anything.
However, no team has lost the last 3 games and gone on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but a lot of times that's because sometimes when teams are playing their people and lose, then you know, momentum's not there. Now, when you're not playing your people, it's really saying you don't care whether you win or not, or you're sacrificing that. The Colts literally played all their backup people yesterday and still won that game.
Yeah.
So I think it was an emotional thing. I think it was the right thing for Tony Dungy to do, to be back on the sidelines yesterday.
Quickly, any chance it could be Manning against Manning in the Super Bowl?
That's a real long shot. I mean, both the Colts are seeded 1 in the AFC, but I don't think I've ever seen a group of playoff teams as good as the AFC playoff teams this year. If you go all the way down to the number 6 seed, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, and work right up for that. Now, the NFC is not as strong, but also the Giants certainly aren't rated as high as a lot of other teams in the NFC.
Should be a fun next couple of weeks.
Hope so.
All right, Archie, thanks very much.
Eric, thank you. Happy New Year.
All right, thanks, you too. And coming up in the next half hour.
From WWL TV, the spirit of Louisiana. This is Louisiana's news leader, Channel 4's Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm Dennis Woltering.
And I'm Angela Hill. He took the Saints farther than they had ever gone in his first year.
But after several tough years, including this season's 3-13 finish, the Saints fire head coach Jim Haslett. Jim Henderson's here now with that story. Jim?
They call it Black Monday around the NFL, that first Monday at the end of the regular season, and the Saints contributed to that today. The parade of coaches to the firing squad around the NFL today included Saints coach Jim Haslett, fired by the team with 1 year remaining on his contract. General Manager Mickey Loomis said he informed the head coach of his decision that Loomis called a termination at a 9 o'clock meeting this morning. Loomis said the team will move quickly to find his successor, given how many teams around the NFL are now in the market for new leaders. He said he'll look for a coach who has at least some NFL experience, ruling out a college head coach who had been confined to that level. Loomis also said the decision wasn't based just on this one chaotic season and was not an easy one regarding a man he called a friend.
It's difficult for everyone involved because, you know, as I said, Jim is a good head coach, but he's a good person. He's likable. You know, he's my friend. You know, we've worked side by side for 6 years now, and you know, I know Tom feels the same way. It's very difficult, and yeah.
7 openings now around the NFL for head coaches, including the Saints, with Jim Haslett's firing today. Mike Sherman was relieved of his duties today for the Green Bay Packers. Mike Tice got the axe last night for the Minnesota Vikings. Houston relieved Dom Capers of his duties today. Now, that's the second time that he has been fired from an expansion team. Of course, he was with the Charlotte Panthers earlier. Now, those Houston Texans have asked to interview Bronco offensive coordinator Gary Kubiak. He's a candidate for this job, along with many others. His name has been mentioned here in the past. They say one other unnamed NFL team has also requested permission to talk with Kubiak. Perhaps that could be the Saints. Perhaps they eventually will. Mike Martz gone in St. Louis. Steve Mariucci fired after Thanksgiving with the Detroit Lions, and Dick Vermeil retired after the final game that he coached with the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday.
What about some of these guys coming here?
Some of these people, I think of the people that I see right now on this list, I think Mike Sherman possibly. I think anybody else would be a tough sell. Dick Vermeil's not going to come out of retirement. Steve Mariucci, I don't like him. Mike Martz is too volatile. Jim Haslett used to beat him with pretty much regularity. Mike Tice I don't like. I think of all these people, possibly the only one they might consider might be a Mike Sherman, also because he has a general manager background as well. At one point, he did both jobs with the Packers. Didn't do both of them great, but at least he has some personnel experience. Maybe he could lend that to the Saints front office. But I really think they'll look for a fresh face, at least initially.
Do you think that Haslett will get a job?
Yes, I think he'll probably, I don't want to say he'll sit out this year because there are going to be so many openings. He's always said he wanted to get back up to Buffalo. That job is not open right now, but maybe eventually it will be. I wouldn't at all be surprised if Jim Haslett sits this year out, takes the money on the contract. The contract will be honored, the Saints said today. Just kind of cools his jets a little bit and looks around to see what will be there next year and comes back rejuvenated. I think he will coach again in the NFL, and I think he'll be more successful than he was here.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
The long-suffering Saints fans, the end of this season couldn't come soon enough, and after yesterday's finale, it seemed even Haslett knew the handwriting was on the wall. Lucy Bustamante reports.
Saints coach Jim Haslett found himself fighting the odds for an entire season. And after Sunday's loss against Tampa, he found himself fighting back tears when questioned about his future with the Saints after going through Hurricane Katrina.
I think that I'll be a better coach and a better person for it as I go in the future, because I don't think there's anything that I haven't seen, done, dealt with, problems that came up.
I think he's got to move on personally for himself.
That's the opinion of Sue Randazza, the owner of the Black and Gold shop on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. For 13 years, Randazza has made her life around the Saints and their merchandise.
But overall, it hasn't been bad because there's a lot of people that's away from New Orleans that still want merchandise, and a lot of people that lost merchandise that still want their Saints merchandise.
Randazza says that since Hurricane Katrina, the fleur-de-lis items have been the hottest thing in the store. She says if she wants to see an increase in Saints merchandise, a new coach will be best for business.
Anytime there is a change, it sparks the people again. When Dick was named coach, it was a bit, because of a big name. It was, everybody has more hope that, they're going to come in and change.
It's kind of understandable, too. I mean, you can only go through so many disappointing seasons before either trying to go someplace else or get a change in scenery, I guess.
I think the Saints need two things. They need a coach and they need a quarterback.
It's a business, and you're not performing, you have to go.
I think you probably should have got a push this year, given the circumstances. You probably should have got fired last year.
Some people admit to being too preoccupied with other things to even care about the topic.
Much bigger, a lot more important issues than football.
Katrina put a strain on an entire city. Still, Haslett says it did not kill his love of the game.
I could coach football, all year round. I hate the offseason. I hate free agency, recruiting. I mean, I kind of like it, but I mean, I'd rather coach games.
Lucy Bustamante, Channel 4, Eyewitness News.
In 6 seasons under Jim Haslett, the team won 45 games and lost 51. Haslett took over from Mike Ditka in 2000, and his first season was his best. Haslett leading the Saints to the franchise's only playoff victory, and he was named Coach of the Year. Haslett's teams never won more games than that first season, and they never went to the playoffs again. After 3 seasons, the Haslett team won more than half their games. But in the last 3 seasons, the team only won 19 games.
Turning to other news, in the new year, the multi-billion-dollar restaurant industry is struggling with the same problem it's had ever since. The Saints make a big change as they head back home.
Yeah, and I really wonder if they would have if they'd stayed in San Antonio. Now, I think most Saints fans here had soured on Jim Haslett, had soured on Aaron Brooks, and had soured on Tom Benson. 2 of the 3 people could be changed, and 2 of the 3 now have been changed as the team heads back home. There was one school of thought that Jim Haslett deserved a mulligan for this year, guiding the Saints through the deepest, muddiest, and most turbulent waters of a season left in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. There was even a suggestion by Joe Theismann on ESPN that Haslett deserved Coach of the Year honors for what he did. Yesterday, an assistant coach told me, quoting now, "I don't think anyone will ever appreciate the job that Jim Haslett did this year in holding this team together." Tom Benson and Mickey Loomis didn't appreciate it enough to retain him to coach the Saints under the last year of his contract in 2006.
The conditions were definitely, difficult. And I can't say enough how much I appreciate and admire the job that he did in keeping our team together and playing hard and playing with effort. At the same time, obviously the one-loss record wasn't what, what he wanted or expected, nor what, our fans wanted or expected, or myself. So in the end, this isn't a fair business with regard to the conditions. You just want to know the results.
As we said earlier in this newscast, this was Black Monday. Dennis, Jim Haslett was a realist concerning the profession that he's in, knowing it's a bottom-line business. He was terminated today with 1 year remaining on his contract after a 3-13 season in 2005. Haslett was unavailable for comment, but said in a release issued by the team today, quoting now, "There is no denying all of the effort we put in didn't provide the results you need in this league. Haslett was never afraid of the work, putting in the grueling hours every successful head coach must. He took the fall today, but Mickey Loomis said the failure of this team was a collective one."
Really, we let him down. I let him down. Our players let him down. This isn't all about the head coach. It never is. He's the guy that is the focal point and, is the first line of defense, if you will. But, it's an organization failing, not just the head coach.
I'm joined now by phone with WWL's Archie Manning. And Arch, did Tom Benson and Mickey Loomis, do you think, do Jim Haslett a favor today?
I think so. I think we've kind of seen this coming. I think Jim's exhausted. I think the year took its toll on him, but also the last few years and not having any more success than they did after a great start. I think he's just been searching and thought they had the answers, had some keys, and it just hadn't worked. And I think this year just really took its toll on Jim Haslett.
Arch, what do you think the Saints should look for in a new head coach?
I'm kind of guilty, Jim, of always thinking on the offensive side. But, of course, I think with the situation, too, we've got to consider post-Katrina, the team coming back next year. You know, we don't really know what's in store for the organization 12 months from now, 24 months from now. It needs to be someone, obviously, that can inspire the team and light a fire, win some games, but I think also create some excitement around the city and around the area to get people to come, you know, if they're playing, get in the Dome next year in South Louisiana to buy tickets and for companies and box suites and so forth, get the enthusiasm back.
Mickey Loomis said today that he wants a head coach with NFL experience, apparently ruling out a college head coach. Do you agree with that?
I do. I mean, I'm not against college coaches, and, you know, look what Nick Saban did this year. I'm not sure there's a Nick Saban out there. Kirk Ferentz is often mentioned in Iowa. I don't know if New Orleans would be a fit or not for Kirk. I think you look on the NFL side, there's not a Bill Parcells. There's not too many people out there I see right now who've had head coaching jobs. So I think you look in the assistant ranks, or at least you scan that carefully, especially your coordinators offensively and defensively throughout the league.
Offensive coordinator Gary Kubiak with the Denver Broncos. He's going to interview with Houston. He's been mentioned as a candidate here for some time, as you well know. Will it be hard for New Orleans to compete for a candidate that's really in demand given the conditions here?
I just wonder about that. You know, I thought going before this morning there was going to be 7 new openings, and I wasn't counting on Mike Sherman, so I may be wrong. There's going to be 7 or 8. I wonder how New Orleans will stack up if you've got 3 teams after one guy with the circumstances going on here. But I still think there's plenty of candidates out there, Jim.
Archie, I thank you so much, and enjoy the holiday, what's left of it, okay? And that's Archie Manning talking about the search for a new head coach, and certainly a lot of candidates' names will pop up in the near future.
What about Mac Brown?
I don't think you could get him away from Texas right now.
No. Good school.
Right. Thanks, Jim.
Well, Saints fans heard about the news just after noon today, and is the case with such passionate followers of the team. They're never short of opinions.
I think it's going to be a new start. Definitely. He's done his time well, but it was time for him to go.
He should get a free win this year, I think, given the circumstances, you know. Let him make some changes and see what's going to happen after this year. We need stability right now, and now we don't have it.
It's hard to feel sorry for people that are making these 6-figure, 7-figure salaries and they're not doing their job. You know, any average Joe Blow person on a job, you don't do it, you lose it.
I'm glad to see him go. I really am, okay? I think the Saints need 2 things. They need a coach and they need a quarterback.
Well, Katrina may be long gone, but
A rough day today, but Haslett has had some good times here.
He has. You were asking me earlier how many head coaches usually go in the NFL. 3 went last year. The average is 5.9 since 1970, so they're already over that average this year, and there may be more to come. Jim Haslett's name was one of a growing list among NFL head coaches who were or had been terminated or have retired. There are 7 head coaching vacancies around the NFL in New Orleans, Green Bay, Minnesota, Houston, St. Louis, Detroit, and Kansas City. Some would argue that every one of those jobs is more attractive than the one right here, right now. But Mickey Loomis doesn't see our problems as seriously handicapping his search.
I don't think it'll be difficult. You know, this is a good job. Obviously, we have some challenges in front of us, but frankly, I wouldn't want a head coach that doesn't want to face those challenges.
Haslett's head coaching career began with such promise, but ended with much disappointment. Juan Kincaid looks back at the highs and lows of Jim Haslett's 8-year association with the Saints.
Jim Haslett became the Saints' 13th head coach back on February 3rd of 2000, and immediately he proved to be a great hire by owner Tom Benson. That season, Haslett guided the team to its first playoff appearance in 7 years, and the franchise's first ever playoff victory. But the problem with strong starts is they always come with even greater expectations. And that's why Haslett was let go today, because he didn't live up to his first-year success. His following 4 seasons were marred with inconsistency from top to bottom. Bad draft picks, bad play on the field, bad leadership on the sidelines, all leading to a disappointing 46-52 record. And how about bad timing? Haslett's team always picked the wrong time to streak. In 2001, the team saw its 7-5 record turn to 7-9 after losing its final 4 games. In 2002, Haslett signed a multi-year extension to his contract, but that didn't inspire a team that needed just 1 victory in its final 3 games to make the playoffs. They lost all 3 games to non-playoff teams. 2003 and 2004 delivered very average teams, just 8-8. But 04 ended on what figured to be a high note, winning the final 4 games, just missing the playoffs in a tiebreaker.
Great year.
And that brings us to 2005, with the team primed for a breakout season. Hurricane Katrina hit and began to take its toll. The team won its season opener at Carolina, then the bottom fell out, losing streaks of 2, 6, and 5 to close the season at 3-13. The team's worst record since 1999, the year before Haslett was given the reins. So 8 years after coming on board as a Saints assistant, Jim Haslett's work in New Orleans is over. Now the work begins on finding his successor, while Haslett looks to find success elsewhere. I'm Juan Kincaid, Channel 4 Eyewitness Sports.
4 weeks ago, before the Saints played the Atlanta Falcons, Jim Haslett asked Tom Benson to fire him and put him out of his misery. 4 weeks later, Tom Benson obliged. Ironically, it was with 4 games to go in the 2004 season that Haslett expressed similar sentiments to Tom Benson. But then Haslett retook control of his football team, and it responded with 4 straight victories, delaying his fate. With 4 games left in this season, he tried to execute a similar turnaround. He had made the decision to bench Aaron Brooks that he would execute after that game 4 weeks ago against the Atlanta Falcons on Monday night. In trying to maintain control of his team, he benched Darren Howard, his franchise player, because Howard had balked at performing even 1 repetition on the scout team, saying, "I'm a franchise player. I don't do that." Haslett covered for him by saying he had a knee injury. The truth was that he contemplated releasing him then and there. But this time there was no finishing kick to the season. The last 4 games were merely 4/5 of a season-ending losing streak that solidified the fate that Haslett had asked for in frustration 4 games ago, but seemed to be having second thoughts about yesterday. Prior to yesterday's game, I asked a veteran Saints assistant whom he would get rid of to change this team for the better. Besides Aaron Brooks, whose departure is a foregone conclusion, he said Darren Howard, Wayne Gandy, Mike McKenzie, and Joe Horn. Sometimes a team requires a new voice to get its attention. The Saints will now have one. Sometimes a coach requires new ears that will listen more attentively. The new coach needs those as well, and certainly will have some. Whose voice this is, whose ears those are, what will be said, and for how long it will be listened to will determine how long it will be before the successor to Jim Haslett's successor comes on board. Changes were and changes must be made in hopes that the more things change, the more they remain the same for the New Orleans Saints is finally changed. And that's Look at Sports.
And good luck to Jim Haslett.
Yes, it's a good man. I'm going to miss him a lot. I'm going to miss a lot of the guys on his staff. I thought very highly of this staff, a lot of good people, and I think Jim Haslett will be successful again.
Oh, absolutely. Nice family, too. Wonderful wife and kids.
From WDSU, News Channel 6 is on your side.
Really, this is based upon the best thing for a football team, the best thing that gives us a chance to be successful going forward.
Jim Haslett looks for a new job as the Saints in their 6-year relationship with the head coach. Good evening, everyone. I'm Camille Whitworth.
And I'm Chris Fairbairn. He brought the Saints their only playoff victory, but tonight Jim Haslett is out of a job. We have team coverage tonight. Hear from fans who suffered through the team's 3-13 season. But first, WDSU News Channel 6 sports reporter Fletcher Mackel has the official word from the Saints front office. He has tonight's big local story.
He came to the Crescent City 6 years ago as the 13th coach in Saints history, saddled with an unlucky number. Today was Jim Haslett's unlucky day, and no voodoo magic could save the 50-year-old from being fired. Haslett led the Saints to a 45-51 overall record and the franchise's only postseason victory. A native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Haslett was named the NFL Coach of the Year in 2000, but a 3-13 record this year did the former All-Pro linebacker in. Saints general manager Loomis says the failure lies more with just the head coach.
And I believe in Jim. I believe he's a good head football coach. And, you know, really we let him down. I let him down. Our players let him down. You know, this isn't all about the head coach. It never is. He's the guy that is the focal point. And, is the first line of defense, if you will. But, it's an organization failing, not just the head coach.
Now, earlier today, I spoke with a Saints insider who says today's move is no surprise, not even to Jim Haslett. Kenny Wilkerson has been the Saints sideline reporter for 16 years and speaks with Jim Haslett on a daily basis.
I think he wanted it. I think he wanted it. I think he's. I could almost say I know he's wanted it since last year. He didn't want to come back. He wanted massive changes. He wanted big changes to even come back this past season, way before the hurricane and everything. I think he wanted this. I think he privately, and I know that he has expressed a lot of concern of how things are run and how this organization is run and ownership and the whole 9 yards. I think that this was. I don't think he is as disappointed in this as he may say in press conferences or anything like that. I think he's probably going to be pretty happy about this.
The last time the Saints fired a head coach was 1999. Mike Ditka and general manager Bill Kuharag were both let go. But this time around, it's just Haslett. General manager Mickey Loomis will retain his position and reportedly get a promotion.
There's no doubt, absolutely without question, Mickey Loomis has to shoulder a lot of this blame. A lot of what's gone on and what's gone wrong with the football team. He's the boss. He's been the boss now for a couple of years since Randy's been gone, and the boss has to take the blame.
Now GM Mickey Loomis will shoulder the burden of selecting a new head coach. Some possible replacements who might interest Saints management are Denver Broncos assistant Gary Kubiak, former Minnesota Viking head coach Mike Tice, former St. Louis Rams head coach Mike Martz, and Fresno State head coach Pat Hill, who once coached in the NFL under New England's Bill Belichick. And the Saints do have to interview a minority candidate or they'll face a fine from the league.
Boy, what a way to end the season, huh? After Katrina and now this.
Interesting offseason ahead.
All right, thanks a lot, Fletcher. And by the way, Jim Haslett had 1 year left on his contract. He was scheduled to earn $3.2 million. The Saints will continue to pay Haslett unless he is hired by another NFL team.
And as you might imagine, Saints fans have plenty to say about today's firing. WDSU News Channel 6 reporter Richard Angelico is live now to continue our team coverage. Richie?
Well, Camille, out in Metairie, the black and gold shop, the crowds were thin, but the opinions were strong. When asked the question, what do you think about Jim Haslett's firing?
I don't know. I kind of liked Haslett myself, but, if you can't get the job done, you got to go.
I didn't know who it was. I just got back in town yesterday.
Well, they just fired him.
Well, God bless him.
What do you think about Mr. Haslett being fired?
Quite interesting. I just walked in the store and I heard it announced on the radio. Obviously, I think Jim Haslett knew that it may have been a day of reckoning for him with the season that they had, and I guess in his defense, the city has suffered and the team has suffered, and all we can be happy for is that we will have him back next year.
I think it's time that they need to get rid of all of them, because it's nothing but a bunch of ain'ts to me, They ain't been winning,
But 6 will head to Mid-City and ask the question, do you think Tom Benson will spend the money it takes to get a really great coach? Reporting live from the CBD, Richard Angelico, WDSU. News Channel 6.
All right, Richie, of course, we'll keep our eyes on things. And now we want to hear from you. Did Jim
Haslett was the fall guy. I mean, they didn't win, and so the players might have been
one of potentially many. When you're 3-13, probably a lot of changes in the offing as needs be. Sometimes change is best for all parties involved. Jim Haslett indicated such after yesterday's season-ending loss in Tampa, and today the Saints brass took a step in that direction, relieving Haslett of his coaching duties after 6 seasons and a 46-52 career record.
I told Jim this morning what my intention was. I know what his desires were. And understood those, but I told him what my intention was this morning, and again, we talked about it, and we both agreed that it was probably in the best interest of both parties.
NFC title game. Haslett got off to a blazing start after being promoted to head coaching post in 2000, guiding the Saints to an NFC West Division title and the franchise's first ever playoff victory. Since then, his team posted only 1 winning season, and this year's 3-13 mark only made the problems the team faced moving before and after Hurricane Katrina even worse. Haslett is generally considered a player's coach and is expected to receive other opportunities around the NFL. The Saints, however, trying to come back home for 2006, could not come back home with the same promises of mediocrity turning elite. Haslett now becomes the 7th NFL coach to vacate his previous position this year, all but the
ABC 26 News.
Good evening, I'm Liz Reyes, and welcome to ABC 26 News. Happy New Year. We're coming to you live tonight at our temporary trailer site downtown since Hurricane Katrina. Well, it is not a good start to the new year for Saints coach Jim Haslett. The Saints fired the 50-year-old today. Ed Daniels now on what the Saints are calling a move in a new direction, Ed?
Well, let's hope it's in a positive direction. Depends on the kind of players you bring in, though, and that's something that Jim Haslett did not help do a good job of the last couple of years. Divorce for Jim Haslett and the Saints came this morning in a meeting with General Manager Mickey Loomis in San Antonio. Loomis fired Haslett with 1 year remaining on his current contract, but Haslett was happy to take the cash and run. 2 NFL sources told us Haslett asked for a contract extension, and when no extension was granted, asked to be fired. Loomis said the Saints will honor the last year of Haslett's deal worth more than $3 million. In February of 2000, marketing guru Arnold Filko, GM Randy Mueller, and Haslett were all hired by Tom Benson. Among the lowest paid in the NFL at their positions, Mueller and Haslett produced a quick turnaround, a 10-win regular season followed by the team's first ever playoff victory. But things quickly unraveled. Mueller was fired in May of 2002, Filko last fall, and today Haslett after a 5th consecutive non-playoff season. Haslett's final Saints team was 3-13, but that was post-Katrina.
I think he performed very well under some really adverse conditions, unprecedented conditions, kept the team together and playing hard. You know, unfortunately, we haven't had the results over the last, 5 seasons that you come to expect in this league.
Haslett's been in this league for a while as a player and a coach, so I'm sure he'll be hired right away.
Going into the year, coach felt like he would have to put a playoff team on the field to get his job back. I know he was on the hot seat, and then Katrina came through, and I think he did a great job. I mean, as best he could.
Coming up in sports, a look back at Jim Haslett's tenure as Saints head coach and who the Saints should pursue to fill the vacancy. I'll have my thoughts on that coming up later in sports.
So could he technically move on and get another coaching
gig
and still get paid for
absolutely.
the Saints?
Here's the deal. If what happened, let's just say he went to Buffalo or Pittsburgh or some other place. If they paid him $3 million a year, then Tom Benson would be off the hook.
Interesting.
But if he stays and just takes it easy,
and lies on a
goes
beach
to Destin and goes to the beach,
yeah,
he's got 3 million reasons to do that.
And to just sit back and reflect on his time with the Saints.
A lot of time to reflect.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ed.
You bet.
Well, focusing now on the future, with Haslett out and the Saints securing the #2 pick in the draft, fans and critics say ticket sales for next season could take off. Ticket sales were extremely low before this season, with only about 30,500 tickets sold before the first games, but some say if the team plays its cards right now, that could all change next season. Dawn Ostrom now with that part of our story. Dawn.
Well, Liz, there has been so much uncertainty about this team. Would they come back from San Antonio? Would Haslett be there? Would Aaron Brooks be there? Now, so many of those questions have been answered, and Saints experts say the 2006 season could see a real resurgence of fan interest. Sports fans were more interested in college football tonight than in the Saints. But they say if the Saints use their #2 draft pick to get quarterback Matt Leinart out of USC, they'll be very interested in the black and gold.
I want to go, absolutely. And Matt Leinart, all about it.
If we get Matt, we'll be all right.
Before the Saints can think about drafting Matt, they'll have to replace Coach Jim Haslett. Sports Talk host Ken Trahan says it may be hard to lure coaches and players to post-Katrina New Orleans.
The primary problem that you have right now is not only selling your football franchise, but selling your metropolitan area. And then beyond that, to convince people that you're going to be in one locale for a while. Because you sign here, and then in another year's time, you might be in San Antonio, or in 2 years' time, you might be in Los Angeles. So much uncertainty is going to make it very difficult to attract the top-flight coach and top-flight players.
Trahan says one of the most important things the Saints need in a new coach is discipline. The team earned top rankings the last 2 seasons in penalties. Trahan says coaches coach and players play, but there should be repercussions for the way the players play.
If you make mistakes on the field, then there should be punishment for it. Then you get benched, or then you work on it over and over and over again in practice, in repetition, until it doesn't happen again. And very obviously, that's been lacking with this franchise.
Bottom line, though, Trahan says the fastest way to generate interest in ticket sales is with a new coach and a new quarterback, and the Saints should have both, although most fans say they want one more change.
Get rid of the owner.
Expect that change to be happening anytime soon. And if you're a fan, just because the team ended this year 3-13, don't expect another dismal season. Remember, they went 3-13 in 1999, their final year with Mike Ditka. The very next year, Jim Haslett comes in, takes them to 11-7, and their first ever playoff victory.
It really is a combination. How big of a factor and an obstacle do those experts think it's going to be given the situation, rebuilding of our city?
Well, Ken Trahan used one word over and over again when I talked to him tonight. He said, I think we will need to, quote, overpay both players and coaches to get them here. To level the playing field, they'll need to be paid more than they would be paid otherwise.
So once again, it comes back to Tom Benson having to shell out the bucks.
Having to shell out the money, and if he's paying Jim Haslett $3-point-whatever million to sit on a beach somewhere, he might not want to overpay other coaches to come here and work. So it could be tenuous, but Matt Leinart could be the golden player.
Exactly, like you were saying. Thanks a lot, Dawn, and that's exactly